welcome everybody. We've just seen the participants now coming into the room, and I'd like to thank everybody for taking an hour of their time today to listen in on this very, very important webinar, the latest in a series of Shipmanagement International webinars that we're doing in conjunction with Kaiko. So we're very, very pleased for that, and nice to see Fabian here today on the panel as well. Just before we sort of go into this sort of technical side, technical side and the subject matter of the webinar, just to talk to the delegates and say that you will have an opportunity today to participate as well in the webinar through the chat facility and also the Q&A. So really, really encourage you to send in questions that you may have. This is a very, very emotive, very important subject matter. So please whiz in some questions, anything there, and I'll do my best to make sure that they get answered throughout the debate. We will be sticking sort of originally to an hour debate. It might go over a few minutes, but I'm also conscious of the fact that we all are on a time frame or what have you. So as I said, today's webinar, the very important area of SIRE 2.0 is here. We know that. But what does a new inspection regime mean for the industry? The panel, the expert panel, and you see them in front of you, and I'll get them all to introduce themselves in a second. They'll address the challenges, the opportunities, and the necessary compliance strategies under the new system. So without any further ado, I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start basically clockwise from my left-hand side. And Mr. Barker, if I could ask you to introduce yourself and a little bit of a 2-minute on your views on what the SIRE 2.0 means. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Sean. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Barker. As you can see, it's a great pleasure to be with you here this morning to discuss SIRE 2.0, something very close to my heart. I'm actually a consultant to OCIMF on the SIRE 2.0 project, and I've been closely involved with it for, I know, up to 5 years now. From the very outset, initially I was involved with creating the question set from the ground upwards, from the blank page. And latterly, I've been ensuring a smooth transition from VIQ7 to SIRE 2.0. So, as you can imagine, I'm very happy this week to see it's actually launched, and we're getting very close to the completion of that transition. And in fact, the final and last VIQ7 inspections should be taking place this week. And after that, there will be no more, and it'll be SIRE 2.0 only, which is something of achievement for the whole industry, I think, not just for OCIMF, but for all the people who've helped us, for Intertanko and many other people who have contributed significantly to the project. 2.0 is a very significant step change for the industry, and particularly the introduction of human factors, which is pretty new to everybody and something we all have to learn about, and I think will be an ongoing journey for a long time as we learn from, as OCIMF side learns from what we see coming in and what operators and vessel operators learn coming the other way. But one way or the other, everybody in the industry has to familiarize themselves with the new system and adapt. And this includes a very large group of people: inspectors, vessel crews, vessel operators, superintendents, the submitting companies, their vetters, and also the report recipients, who also have to adapt their processes and methods to be able to interpret the new reports and to get the most out of what's now being offered to them. And of course, everybody's IT departments are going to have to adapt as well, because that is also going to be a big challenge for people to adapt. So I hope I can help with this process today a little bit and answer as many of your questions as I can. And the one thing I am thankful for is I'm not going to be asked the most frequently asked question for the last 5 years, which is, when is SIRE 2.0 going to be launched? Now we know. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the chat.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve. And we'll have a lot of material there that we can extrapolate and talk about with you later on. Captain Zalenski, if I can come over to you, you're next on my screen. If I could ask you to introduce yourself, sir, and give a little bit of a perspective on the importance of all of this and what it means for you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, John. Yes, my background, master mariner with 20 years seagoing experience. Last 20 years, I'm with Columbia Shipmanagement, and my current role is Group CEO. My exposure to SIRE 2.0 started quite early, yes, as a part of Intertanko working group dealing with OCIMF on the preparation. So I had the luxury to have a yearly indication of what to expect and what SIRE 2.0 is about. Actually, I'm young enough to remember 1993 when SIRE system was introduced first. And I was a young master at that time, and it was a game changer for the industry. It definitely made the industry much safer, and not only tanker sector of it, but slowly it's influenced the whole other segment of the industry, and we definitely had very positive effect. But last few years, we kind of stopped seeing real improvement in this area, because our inspections with one or two observations hardly identify any real area for improvement. The changing the system and changing the inspection regime and addressing human element was kind of logical. Of course, it's affected the industry significantly and will affect the industry significantly in terms of adapting ourselves to the new inspection regime. But I think we have a clear reason for that. We have a clear goal in making our seafarers safer, our industry safer, our environment protected better. So we need to take some steps in order to adapt to the new system. Of course, during the webinar, we will have a chance to go into more details about the new system.
Thank you very much indeed, Leonid, and look forward to taking up a number of these points with you over the next 55 or so minutes. Captain Kuba, nice to see you. Welcome all the way probably from the Isle of Man. I guess that's where you are at the moment. We've already started to touch on the whole issue of the human factor, and I know that's very, very important to yourself and also to InterManager. Please introduce yourself. Not that you probably need to do that, but introduce yourself and just give a little bit of a perspective on this as well, please, if you can, Kuba.
Yeah, Secretary General of InterManager, Association of Ship Managers and Crew Managers, and I will be looking into that with the aspect of human beings, basically. My background, believe it or not, I did pass my examination and I was OCIMF and CDI inspector. And as a CDI inspector, I was both gas and chemical. That gave me a superb perspective. But then I also investigated accidents, so I am a certified accident investigator. And I'm a big believer in no blame culture. No just culture or anything other, but no blame culture. And that's how I'm looking into SIRE 2.0. But maybe before I go into it, I just wanted all of us to have a perspective, because I love context. OCIMF, how many ships actually OCIMF covers? Would you believe that it's less than 5% of all ships in the world? So SIRE 2.0 will only touch to 5% of ships. It's good. It's definitely excellent, because it is usually, with vetting inspection starting 93, 94, we have seen the quality change, big style, and the tankers being actually the leaders when it comes to the safety change and everything. Having said that, I welcome everybody to visit our statistics and see whether tankers are the safest ships in the world, especially when it comes to enclosed spaces. Not necessarily. So there is a long way to go for all of us. SIRE 2.0, what that means to a lot of people on board of the ships. So I went back to our captains and chief engineers and others and asked them, what do they feel? And they are in panic stations, because they've already went, some of them, through 3 test inspections. And what they see is enormous amount of work and new skills they have to learn. For example, how to take pictures. What does it mean to update the system with pictures? What pictures are good, what pictures are bad? What words to use? How to welcome inspectors? What to expect from inspectors? And so on and so forth. Are we training our people at maritime colleges to do the SIRE inspections or any other vetting inspections? No, we are not. So that puts a lot of pressure on people like Leonid, like Pradeep, who used to be running the show, which means we need to prepare the ship office to be supportive, but also to be on the administrative receiving end, because a lot of now administration involving SIRE 2.0 will be coming through the office, the same way as it was with the old one. But the requirements are much, much higher now. Are our offices getting more people to deal with it? Are our ships getting more people on board to deal with it? Or are we diluting the core business our seafarers are supposed to have? I was very impressed with actually few people mentioning that SIRE has already embraced 2 years later, embraced with 2.0, and inspectors are prepared, trained, but the masters of the ships are saying there is lack of standardization. 3 inspections they had, every inspector was still riding their own horse. It wasn't unified. Very good example was from Sean Noonan, who was a superb inspector, mentioned several times by different people. Wherever he goes on board, he is a superb vetting inspector who is really getting into the bottom of things and also being able to educate people. That's my opening salvo for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kuba. Quite a lot of important issues there, which I'll bring into the debate in a couple of minutes. Captain Pradeep, can I come over to you? If you can just introduce yourself and contribute to what has already been said about this very, very important issue.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everyone. I think I would like to start my life story backwards. So for the last 1 year, I have founded an e-learning company, which is doing online learning. The way we are different from previous providers is that we do micro-learning, we do games for learning, and we do training in virtual reality. Now, the year before that, I retired from Anglo-Eastern Shipmanagement Group. I used to be the head of safety, quality, health, environment, training, and a little bit of digitalization projects. Did that for 32 years, came ashore in 1992. And before that, I sailed from 1974 to 1992 on various ship types with 18 different nationalities in 7 different companies. I would probably not get selected in modern days because my theory was that each year I need to be in a different company to know how do they do things, how do different nationalities work. That's no longer, people don't call that as a rolling stone now, and they like to have people who are only so. But then from 1985, was in Anglo-Eastern for 38 years after getting the experience. My views on SIRE for the opening part, I would say change, good change. Accidents don't get prevented by the newest of the ships being there or by the best safety management system manuals. The manuals, in fact, right now, I would say, are dictated by SIRE and TMSA, and in the bulk carrier world now for the RISQ or CDI also for tankers. But essentially, the safety management system in most companies looks pretty much alike because the TMSA auditors kind of give the same findings, and then everybody goes around asking for the procedures from here and there, and it all ends up kind of cookie cutter. However, the real problem is the human factors, and I have been very lucky to be part of the Intertanko Human Element Group and part of the OCIMF Intertanko Steering Group on Human Element. And besides having participated in groups of WIMCO, Intercargo, practically every association, Nautical Institute, etc., and I'm still chairing Global Met. So that wide exposure has given me that learning that at the end of the day, it's the person behind the best ship in the world, newest ship, newest gadget, or the best manuals. It's that person and what occupies that human being at that moment in time, which is important to prevent accidents. And one of the failings in our industry has been that we investigate accidents up to the point about the human being failed. We don't go beyond why did the human being fail, which includes the ecosystem around them. I've been putting this word in a lot of the OCIMF discussions, that we need to go beyond the seafarer, beyond the company. And when we investigate an accident, we need to look around at the entire ecosystem. Is the number of people on board enough? And the manning scales on a regulatory framework from IMO that is coming off from TMSA or from ISCOT, is that correct? It's got to be a wider one. And so I'm happy with SIRE 2.0 focusing on human factors. I think it is a big change, and seafarers are not used to going through their oral examination all over again in every inspection in a way. But if the inspectors are trained to be good listeners and take this, that it's a quantum change and it's going to take us in the industry some time for everybody to get used to 2.0, then we are on the right track. And I think it will improve not only the tanker industry, but by looking at the tanker industry, the rest of the sectors of the industry, like we have seen the bulk carrier industry copying the tanker industry. So I'm very positive about SIRE 2.0. I think there's a lot of learning that needs to be done for all the stakeholders. And we need a little bit of patience with our seafarers, ship operators, and superintendents to get to it when we actually can improve safety through SIRE 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pradeep. I think this is probably the first webinar that I've actually held where the opening intros are so full of information that actually we haven't got past stage one yet. But Fabian, let me come on to you, sir. You're waiting patiently there. But please introduce yourself and give me your sort of thoughts before we go into the general questions. But over to you.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you to everybody on this panel. It has been really interesting opening statements. So I've been not waiting patiently, but listening closely. My name is Fabian Fussek. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kaiko Systems. We are a maritime technology company based in Berlin and London. And our vision is to work with shipping companies to lead the maritime industry into an era of fact-driven operations. And we do that by utilizing AI-powered data enables maritime professionals to collaborate at eye level between ship and shore, ensuring what we want to achieve: total safety and performance. As of today, we proudly work with over 1,000 ships across all types, including partnerships with top tanker managers such as Columbia Shipmanagement and Captain Zalenski, who's here today, but also we also work with renowned inspectors that were already mentioned, such as Sean Noonan, very closely. And what we do with Kaiko Systems, we focus on making it easier for seafarers to do their job efficiently and better by allowing them to prepare on the go and not from the couch when it comes to SIRE 2.0. We have built a mobile-first inspection platform that allows crews to complete self-assessments, upload the images that were already mentioned, and follow company-specific procedures all in real time. And our system works offline, is customizable to integrate relevant guides and publications, and ensure streamlined compliance with SIRE 2.0 in this case. While we cover a wide range of use cases and have a very flexible platform, we have specifically collaborated with SIRE 2 inspectors and leading industry players to develop a proprietary SIRE 2 self-assessment questionnaire that makes it easier for shipping companies to align with the new inspection regime and take the edge off this transition that, as has already been mentioned, has been a generational one almost. And our goal is really to ensure that both crews and shore teams are fully prepared, informed, and capable of maintaining high standards of safety and quality in an efficient manner every step of the way, and always have this sort of dynamic gap analysis available and know where they are today, where the crew is, where the crew's level of readiness is, and where they need to be before the vetting happens, and not use the vetting as a feedback process on their own readiness, because that should be the point where the readiness is already established. So I tried to keep it short for my introduction. I'm really excited to go into the...
Fabian, thank you very much indeed. So really just onto the first question. I'm going to sort of get everybody to answer this one by one. And then if I can just ask, it's just a melee then, please, we'll have a general debate and stick your hand up and what have you. You've got the raise hand facility here, but you can do that as well. That's not a problem. The first question really, and also bringing into it the sort of looking at the differences between SIRE and SIRE 2.2. What do we think of the challenges of SIRE 2.2 going forward? Now, we touched on some of the points here, but Pradeep, let me come to you, and then I'm then going to go over to Steve as well. But let me come to you first, Pradeep. What are the challenges now that we're facing here going forward for SIRE 2.0?
I would break it up into, again, two parts. One is the physical strategic stuff about uploading photographs, administrative stuff, basically, and the learning associated with that. That's going to be a challenge for people to get used to doing that, but that'll get figured out in the next 3-4 months. Everyone will have someone who knows how to do all that correctly. I think the biggest challenge that we are going to face with SIRE 2.0 is, I would not call it a challenge, I would call it an opportunity that we have. Inspections in general, whether it's PSC, SIRE, CDI, etc., are looked upon by the seafarer as policing. With the SIRE 2.0 safety focus paper, that it's a 8-page document that SIRE had published, right in the beginning, we do say that seafarers are humans and humans can fail. So the challenge or the opportunity is that how do we build trust with the seafarers? At the end of the day, we're all generally ex-seafarers in this business, and we all know that the charterer, the owner, the ship manager, and the seafarer, nobody wants to have an incident of any kind, not a cargo contamination, not an injury, nothing. Can we move a little bit away from policing? Any audit function is a bit of policing, but we have introduced in SIRE 2.0, or OCIMF has introduced good observations. And if I look at the data from the first 130 inspections, which I have been privileged to have access to, so only 7% are positive observations, 93% are negative observations. What message do we give to the seafarer? We are still policing you. We're not appreciating you. I think in safety management, it's a well-known principle that to encourage safe behaviors, you need to have positive reinformation. The old saying goes, what gets appreciated gets repeated. And that's theory, or it's also called the chocolate theory in the schools, that every time a child does well, you give them a chocolate or a little gold star in their diary, and that makes the child improve or try to impress the teacher next time better. And so positive observations could be used with that kind of a positive reinforcement for the seafarer. And I think if we were to utilize the positive observations in a way that we can build the trust with the seafarer, that, hey, this is only for improving safety together, the cooperative word being together, and not as me coming to find what things are you not doing properly. And I am hoping that in a period of, let's say, 2 or 3 years, we will have maybe 70 or 60% negative observations, but 30 or 40% positive observations to bring the seafarer together with us in the journey to make the tanker industry and maritime industry safer. That, I think, is the main challenge or opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pradeep. Let me come on to Steve. Steve, this is firmly one aimed at yourself really here, but do we actually need to be more tolerant of mistakes being made on board ship and be more encouraging with positive observations rather than the sort of negative observations that Pradeep is talking about?
Yes, I agree very strongly with what Pradeep was saying there. And the initiative to put positive observations into the system was there from the very beginning and came from OCIMF's side and many of the submitting companies who contributed to the design, if you like. And it was a very interesting point that Fabian said about this being a generational change. And of course, it is a generational change. And the cadre of existing inspectors who have been doing a very good job with Fabian for many years and are well versed in doing that. The likes of Sean Noonan, who I know myself, he of course he's one of these inspectors. And the inspectors, probably more than anybody, are going to have to make a big leap and a big change to get with the program, if you like. And one of the mindset changes is to adopt the idea of positive observations, which they've never had the opportunity to do before. And in fact, in a way, we're almost discouraged from doing that sort of thing. Each individual inspector, as everybody knows, each individual inspector is just that. They're an individual. And every one of them has their own ideas. And each of them, I think, will pick up on this idea of positive observations differently. Some will give them freely. Some will be very mean with them. But over the initial period of the system, we're hoping that we'll get some sort of consensus about what the balance is right. And to do just what Pradeep is saying is to give encouragement. Because one thing we really do have to understand about the human factors element of SIRE 2.0, it is not meant to penalize or even police people. It's there because we all understand that in the beginning with SIRE, it was hardware-based and we were looking at machinery and hulls and things like this. And then in the second iteration, it moved on to looking at process and procedures and things like that. But now we've gone to the third leg of the stool, which is the human element, which is probably the most important element. But just because we have inspectors who are asking questions of people doesn't mean that we're trying to blame people. And as Kuba said, it's very important that we have whatever we choose to call it, no blame, just go through or whatever. The intention is absolutely not to penalize people or blame people for what is happening, more the case of helping those people to support them in why it is that things are not going right. And the use of the performance influence factors, the PIFs as we like to call them, is going to be very important to how the inspector sees what the PIF is, what was it that caused this I would say failure, but it's some observation that involves a human. Why did he think it was the case? Was it lack of training? Was it fatigue? Was it all these things that are PIFs? And of course, then the ship operator has the ability to give their own PIF in response to that. And they probably, in my opinion, will know better than an inspector why these things have happened. And if they don't, they're going to have to look at it and think about why it is that these things have happened. Why is the inspector believe that fatigue was the basis of this when they think that's probably not the case? So this is going to be a huge, tremendous learning opportunity for people. It will take some time. And once again, as Pradeep so rightly said, people will learn how to do these simple things first and how to put the photographs up. But it will take a bit longer for everybody to get into the idea of the human factors. It'll take the inspectors quite a while to get used to it. It'll take the crew some time to get used to being asked questions where they were never asked before. I'm sure within time, the system will get some momentum and people will start to get some real benefit out of the human factor observations, positive and negative.
Thank you very much, Kuba. You're sitting there very, sort of listening intently there. But I think in your intro, you talked about, the masters and the crew on board. We're looking at all of this with horror about the extra amount of workload. Do you think inspectors need to be more positive? Do you think it needs to be positive, negative, positive type scenario? We've all got to change. We've all got to get those improvements.
Well, the good thing is that indeed OCIMF inspectors are trained and they are centralized when it comes to training, or there is an attempt to do that. And it's not that many inspectors around the world, if you think about it. I can't remember the figure now, but we are talking less than 500, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, it's low 400s.
Low 400. I remember when I was there, it was 350. I allow for another 100 now. So we're talking 400 people. So in theory, it should be okay to make sure that we all singing from the same hymn sheet. And I'm fairly sure 99% of the inspectors get it. They are there, they would like to do the good job, and they would like to support. Steve mentioned one category of people here, and I would like to explore, because Pradeep and Steve already covered what I would like to cover. But I think where we are missing the big style is the top, charterers. These guys are not trained. Charterers are receiving a report. They look 6 versus 2. I'll go with 2. And that's it. And it descends now to Leonid, myself, and the others. How to make sure that we get 2, not 6. Oh, it's not a number game. Sorry, guys. It is a number game. Always was, because the charterer doesn't get it. Charterer is not looking into it. And I don't mean chartering offices. I mean the clerk in the chartering department or clearing department, whoever you would call, is just looking at that. Probably overworked as well. Hundreds of ships have to be cleared. Which one? I'll go for the low-hanging fruit. And that all boils down to how do we prepare the ship? In my opinion, it would be really, really good when the vetting results are coming to Leonid, Pradeep, myself, and we look at this and think, how come that my internal auditor My internal systems did not pick this up before. How come? Then we need a third party to go on board and tell us A, B, C, and D. Where is the drift? World as imagined, and then the inspector comes along and shows us the drift. How come? And I wouldn't blame any of the seafarers for that. It's the system owner who should really be responsible for all of this. We've got enough mechanisms already invented, ISO, ISM, TMSA, and so on and so forth, which should allow vetting inspector to come on board and say, wow, impressive. I've never seen anything like that. But it's not happening at the moment. And going back to the seafarer and saying, why didn't you do that? Well, probably because I've got a time pressure and financial pressures to answer that. So that's all from me. Substitute what Pradeep and Steve already mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuba. Leonid, let me bring you in. It's a good segue there, looking at this whole issue of the charterers and how you can actually get them to sort of come on board with this. But also, I think the last point that Kuba's just said there, where you've got this drift, you know, and shipping has always complained about over-inspection and everybody's coming on and giving all their different viewpoints. How do we narrow that drift? How do we actually ensure that the ship is actually resolving these issues before the inspector comes on, because everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet? But could you give me your perspective, going back to that original question of what are the challenges of SIRE 2?
Thanks, Sean. First of all, the biggest difference between the existing SIRE system and SIRE 2.0 is that we are moving from the technical inspection, which provides a snapshot of vessel's condition at the date of the inspection, to the auditing process, which shows you the wider picture of how the vessel was managed and how vessel is managed by the company. This is the biggest difference. And I would like to be positive here. I can talk hours about challenges on the ship management side, on the arrangement inspection, completing pre-inspection crash canals, uploading certificate and photograph. And I can be very critical towards OCIMF in helping us to make this process simpler, and probably we will have a chance to discuss about that. But I would like to look at it from the positive point of view. As Kuba correctly mentioned, it is a gap between job as imagined and job as done. SIRE inspection now, with the SIRE 2.0 regime, is a gap analysis for me. How familiar my people are with the system and processes and procedures. Because as Pradeep correctly said, we all have the management system adjusted to comply with TMSA requirements. So whenever we have a gap, it's a gap between the system requirements and practical implementation. How to reach this gap? This is a big challenge. And if I see this gap identified for me by SIRE inspector, I have a chance to address it. And I strongly believe that our goal, all of us, to make compliance easier for our seafarers. This is a key here. And I hope to see the SIRE 2.0 will help me to identify this gap between procedures in theory and procedures as implemented on board the vessels, so that I can work towards simplification of my management system to make compliance with the system requirements, industry expectation easier for the seafarers. And this is the way how can we make the workplace safer. This is the way how can we ensure the people will do the job easier and better and safer, which is the most important. But first experience with the trial inspections clearly indicates, to me at least, now that instead of focusing on human factor, the new regime had more subjectivity in the assessment. I was expecting huge increase of human element-related observation. What I can see, inspectors are going on board, and because they are obliged to look at the system, they are obliged to look at the processes. they come up with the observation related to dot is missing here, line is missing there. So they do mini TMSA review during SIRE inspection instead of addressing the human element, instead of identifying gaps. It probably will take some time until inspector will adjust their approach and will realize the procedures themselves are reviewed during TMSA. What they need to look at, how effectively these processes are implemented on board, how they are followed by the crew on board. And this is the most important part for me. And we need to get rid of this negativity, but it will come with the experience. It will not happen in one day. And from this perspective, I'm quite positive. And the only thing which I'm skeptical, and I'm sorry to disagree slightly with the previous comments, it's about positive observation. And the reason I'm skeptical is what Kuba just mentioned. We need to accept that this is commercial inspection. SIRE is a commercial inspection, which helps the screeners to identify the risk factor for chartering specific vessel. And they will only focus on negative findings. They will never consider positive observation. The screeners, they simply have no time for that. They have a specific task. They need to review the number of negative observation and take their decision with regard to chartering or rejecting the vessel based on that. These positive observations are very good. I hope they will motivate people, but I am a bit skeptical about that. Thank you.
Fabian, you've got to follow all of that. That's quite amazing, really. And some very, very important issues there. Against the backdrop of what you think the challenges are, it's also been raised about the lack of standardization and the issues there that Leonid has just been raising there about the fact that it is a commercial operation. And I think we can't get away from that. Answering those points, but what is the market also telling you, as Kaiko systems? You're there to try and resolve and try and develop products to make life easier for the owners and also for the managers. But what is the market telling you? Before you answer, delegates, please send in some questions. There's a lot of material here. Use the chat and the Q&A facility below, and we'll layer those as well. But Fabian, over to you, just to sort of get a bit of perspective on this.
Yeah, thank you. I would not have anything to add when it comes to the challenges that were mentioned. I mean, there will be a significant increase in findings, and just the number will go up definitely, and that will confuse a lot of charterers. And I think that is a given, and that is just something that will cause a lot of communicative overhead, and that is just required, I believe. And so what we see is that everybody's focus is really to just ensure that the preparation is done in the best possible way. Back when I was spending some time in the military, we always said, train as you fight, fight as you train. So people have really embraced that motto and try to really appreciate the new process and take that internally into the ship management themselves to just reduce the number of overall issues and observations. Since also for just one issue found now during the inspection, this may result in multiple negative observation across different elements. So this, naturally just increases the number of findings. Then, of course, there's an increase in complexity as now there's these, rank-specific questions. And so it's very hard to kind of keep that kind of knowledge matrix up to date for every seafarer, for every vessel, of what everybody needs to know and kind of manage this. And so what we see, kind of not front row, but a very close second row as we're helping shipping companies identify these gaps that Leonid talked about, that you really can't get far without adopting modern digital methods and digital solutions. And I think that is also something that Captain Szymanski mentioned, that often the systems are, maybe even out of date, and it's just not made easy for seafarers and shore teams alike to prepare well. And so now that OCIMF has upgraded their approach to a very digital and even mobile approach, we of course believe that it makes a lot of sense to do that as well internally. Because when you look at the process of how ships and how masters have been preparing for these vettings, more often than not, the master has been pulling up the PDFs of the questionnaire, on his computer with the senior officers standing in a half circle around him, and then they would stroll through the document and kind of casually discuss the readiness. And this is a document, as you know, like of over 1,600 pages, and this is just not cutting it. Casual conversation is just not cutting it. And so there needs to be a structured preparation process that allows every seafarer, based on their rank and their vessel, to prepare exactly what they need to know, and then also make it easy for them to report findings that they have observed on the go, like the gentleman here behind me, and not from the couch. And then also make it easy for them to honestly share that there might be a lack of knowledge or just no clarity about a certain question, and then give the shore team the chance to come in and fill that gap and prepare the seafarers before the vetting. As already mentioned, it's a commercial inspection. It's a vetting that really has an impact on the commercial operations. So I think it's very difficult to use the vetting as the feedback process on your readiness. Like that should all happen before. Yeah, so that's the challenges that we see. We do see a lot of problems with the human factors questions, definitely. So there have been, like, a lot of ship managers have been caught on the wrong foot a bit with the human factor element, as often that the comprehensive training courses that are delivered to the crews, they have all the right content, but it's very hard to internalize and really, also become familiar with it and have that knowledge available at that moment. So we definitely see that there is a big need to catch up and to prepare even stronger. It's a learning process for everybody involved. So we're excited to see how this develops. Definitely, I think that the rankings and kind of the order of performance will definitely be shifted around a bit. So the results will come out a bit different than many owners and managers have been used to. That's kind of what we see currently.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabian. Thank you. Well, let me bring in Steve, and just say to the panelists here, just to butt in and stick your hand up on this. But I mean, you're talking there, Fabian, about, a lot of problems with the human factor. We talk about the role of digitalization, and we've got to be embracing that. We've got to be looking at ways to make the whole process easier. But Steve, really, what sort of top of OCIMF's sort of dashboard here about what can be done to assist the crew in all of this? Because we're talking about that divide. We're talking about, in time, we hope we have a system that's going to be workable and all the rest of it. What can be done to assist the crew here, do you think?
It's an interesting question because, first of all, I'd probably say it's not OCIMF's position to be pronouncing on this. What I would say is that this is, of course, in the question set for SIRE 2.0, nothing new at all. There's nothing in the question set that comes out of left field. There's nothing in the question set that's been invented by OCIMF. It merely reflects current legislation, current best practice, and things that have been in the public domain for a long time or forever. I think preparing the crew, is more a case of preparing what it is they're going to have to face from the inspector, which is maybe a discussion about how they do their job and things like that, whereas before they wouldn't have expected that. I think Fabian makes some very good points about how are they going to prepare to what is an inspection against. It's an inspection against a much longer document, but it's still an inspection against the same things, the same rules, the same practices that existed before. I don't think, from an OCIMF side, we wouldn't say that the crew are the people with the biggest challenge. They're doing their job. They're doing the job well. They've been doing the job well before. They're doing the job well now. It will perhaps be reported upon differently, but we don't really see that they need to do anything different but to carry on doing what they were doing before. And it will come out what the result of that is.
Right. Kuba, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I think at the end of the day, these things need to be put in train, so then everybody knows what they need to be doing. There's a role for the charters, role for the owners, the managers as well. What are your thoughts? You are on mute, by the way.
Thanks for reminding. Yes, I was. Well, I'll tell you what, Pradeep said something at the very beginning and it resonates with me big style. Trust. Once we learn or gain trust from people from within the system, so the charters will start trusting the management. Management trusts owners. Owners trust, and it goes all the way down. Then I think we start winning. But at the moment, I went out to check because I'm not being subject to vetting inspections anymore. I like them. I absolutely love critical friend to come on board, sit with me and tell me what I'm doing because I'm not seeing it. But you see, this is not being seen as a critical friend because this critical friend has such a result when the vessel can be rejected or accepted. And because of that, a lot of people in between the lines are putting a lot of financial pressure on the... I would love to see chief executives of the company to actually witness vetting inspection on board of the ship. That would be great. If we could pencil this in OCIMF, that at least 1% of all inspections, chief executive is on board, seeing what is happening. That would be great. And I tell you what, I used to be MOL and I used to be on board of the ships. And I put a KPI for myself, 20% of my time to be spent on board of the ships. Managing ships from managing office from the ship, not another way around. And I tell you, that gave me a lot of knowledge, how our own people were supported by our own office. Because again, we believe that this is happening, but actually we are floating somewhere here and sometimes going down and down and down and down. So my question to Steve now is, Steve, because I don't know, I haven't been participating in the nitty-gritties of OCIMF anymore. Do we have a system where there is a supervisor of the vetting inspectors, someone who actually goes through the vetting inspections like CDI does and looks at that and without blaming or anything, just pulls Steve Baker and says, Steve, I've noticed that in your last 3 inspections, you have concentrated on scuppers. Is there something with the scuppers you are very concerned? And we are not seeing... So over to you, Steve.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There absolutely is a system exactly as you described. The older system where inspectors were audited on a periodic basis by senior inspectors, that is gone. We now have a team of quality assessors, QAs as we call them in OCIMF, and they do precisely what you just described. They pull the reports, they review the reports, and they feed back to the inspectors. And this is hugely important in the launch of the system. And, as you will appreciate, that there are thousands of inspections, and there's a limit to how many inspections can be pulled in that way. Certainly in the kickoff period now, we are pulling every first inspection by an inspector, his first 2.0 inspection, reviewing it, feeding back to the inspectors, and this will continue on. We're implementing software to allow the QAs to do this much more efficiently. But just exactly as you described is what is going on and will continue to go on. We've just hired another additional QA to help us. These guys are based regionally. There's one in Houston, there's a couple in London, there's one in Singapore, one in Malaysia. And in addition, they will be going on board and carrying out, going along with inspectors onto ships. But the real basis of the work is doing precisely as described and quality assessing the reports, picking up the trends when they're heading in the wrong direction. And of course, you can imagine in this early period, how many inspectors, this is totally new to them. And of course, they've been trained, but everybody has to learn how things go and learn from their own experience. So there's an awful lot of feedback coming back and forth. And I have to tell you, it's being well received by the inspectors who welcome that sort of feedback to help them get with the system. So this is an absolute pillar of the system, the QAs and the feedback to the inspectors, yes.
Steve, can I just add one thing? Can an inspector raise a sort of negative observation for a question that's not part of the CBIQ? Could they sort of raise other things?
This has always been a question that's raised very often, especially by inspectors. And what do I do if I see something that isn't in the CVIC? It's not in that question's not here for this particular inspection. And of course, it will happen occasionally, right? The answer to that is there's 2 answers, really. One is answer the questions in the CVIC because it's a targeted inspection, it's a focused inspection. So in the first instance, don't try and answer every question in the limited time available because that's impossible. But on the other hand, there are catch-all questions in the CVIC, which are core questions, will always be there, about the deck inspection regime and the engine room safety inspection regime, the pump room safety inspection regime. And you would always be able to capture something that needed to be captured into one of those questions. Because if you see something while you're doing the deck inspection and it's not specifically addressed by a question, but it's a safety issue, then that issue should have been spotted by the vessel's own safety regime, and therefore that is where you can capture the question.
Really, I was saying to the panelists, just jump in if you've got any points you want to raise. Just to Leonid and to Pradeep, there's a couple of points raised there about the role of the office. I think Kuba said, this invites CEOs on board ship or what have you, and also the need for the crew to maybe prepare to sort of, what the inspection is going to be all about. And that might throw out training opportunities. But Leonid, do you have any comments to make on these and other issues that you might have been hearing here? And then I'll get Pradeep to get it. And Fabian, if you've got anything, dive in as well. Don't hurt for you for a couple of minutes.
Sure, of course, we have a role to play. We have a role to play in terms of training our people. But as Steve correctly said, it's nothing new in SIRE 2.0. It's the same level of compliance which is expected with the way how we demonstrate this compliance. This is what has changed, and how people need to present what they do and be able to explain it. And the role of the manager is to provide the training and utilize preferably digital and electronic tools to do the self-assessment, which helps to identify gaps in compliance. And this is where Kaiko is very instrumental in offering these self-assessment tools. And this is what we strongly believe. We develop our own training model on SIRE 2.0, which is rank specific, and it works very well in training people on the requirements. And we utilize Kaiko as a self-assessment tool. These tools help us to get people prepared for the inspection. And as I said previously, I strongly believe that our goal is to make compliance easier. So more we train, more we explain, more we help them to be familiar with the requirements, easier the life for them is. And at the end, in an ideal world, if seafarers are very familiar with the company requirements, with the industry expectation, presenting this to the third-party inspector couldn't be a challenge for them. But of course, in real life, they need help, they need training, they need to adopt to the new system.
Pradeep, do you want to add anything? What have you been hearing?
Yeah, a couple of things. First one on what Kuba had mentioned about this pass and fail thing and how do we build the trust further. I mean, we are pragmatic people. We know that the system is there to protect the charterer's cargo and whether he considers that particular ship safe or not safe. But in order to achieve a higher standard of safety in the industry, one has to look beyond the immediate pass and fail. I fully agree with Kuba that a lot of things don't get reported, don't get done correctly because of this fear. And one of the things is like a technical hold that goes on a ship after an incident, which is kind of penal. And that is the reason why the tanker accident database and the SIRE repositories have not succeeded well in getting transparent full reporting. Since we are in the context of SIRE, I would say that SIRE should be a tool for diagnosing the larger picture in the industry. If we are constantly getting a certain finding on a certain kind of a ship, I think we can use the SIRE findings to go and look beyond at the regulatory framework, at the compliance part of a particular convention. I'll give you an example. If you take MR tanker or a chemical tanker in the North Sea in wintertime, I mean, how much time does that crew have to learn, adopt, or just sleep and try to catch up with the tank cleaning, right? So where is the fundamental problem here? The fundamental problem lies in our regulatory framework, where we have a minimum manning scale, which is taken to be the maximum manning scale because the flags compete with each other about the number of people on board. And the managers and owners compete with each other about the cost of having 22 people or 18 people or 25 people. So I would like to see SIRE being a forum whereby we can look at those findings as a symptom of what is ailing the overall industry in order to improve safety. Having attended IMO meetings for over 20 years, I believe a lot of things can be driven with the right regulations. I want to maybe take up something that is Kuba's favorite topic about enclosed space deaths, right? If you look at that, I mean, does the technology exist today in the world to be able to fit a gas analyzer in every space and to have an interlock so that the tank dome does not open at all till the atmosphere is safe? Yes, it exists. Can we get that thing done through a regulation in IMO? Possibly in another 5 or 10 years if we start today. That's the way IMO works, right? So I'd like to look at things of trying to change things from within. SIRE is a good attempt to look at the human factors, but the devil is always in the detail. And if that 5% of the inspectors or 10% of the inspectors are not doing the right thing, I do like the idea of positive. Leonid said that, okay, maybe I'm being too optimistic about it, but I would say that in 5 years' time, it is possible to go towards a more trust-based SIRE system rather than it continuing to be looked at as, I mean, come on, we're all seafarers. We know that people like to hide things from the SIRE inspector, right? Which are safety issues. Should they be doing that? Or why are they doing that? The simple answer is, if there is a penalty at the end of the day for honesty, the honesty goes out of the window. But if there is a reward for the honesty, then you encourage more honest behavior. And so I would like to conclude to say that we have a generational change, as Fabian put it. We all agree that the human factor is the most important part of preventing accidents. So yes, we senior leaders in the industry need to focus the attention of bringing the middle management, the inspectors, the ship operators, the superintendents, all into a world of trust and a world of tolerance. I mean, things change very quickly on a ship, right? 2 people out of the management team change and everything on the ship can change. We all know that. We are all like seafarers. So do we then reject that ship because of something that happened 2 days ago when the management team changed? Or do we look at the bigger picture and we say, well, okay, the ship and the company has been reliable, and let's talk to them and see what is the mitigating actions that they're going to take, and then decide whether to pass or fail the ship. So it's all a culture change that needs to come with the vetting organizations, with the different companies. It is a change that needs to come at the inspector level of being able to listen to the seafarer. I remember one finding from VIQ 7 that I saw many years ago in Anglo-Eastern. The store's housekeeping is very poor. Yes, the reality behind it was the 3 monthly store supply had just been landed 6 hours before on the ship. The terminal was pushing the ship to go away. So what did the seafarer do? Put it all into the nearest store and say, we'll sort it out later on. And by the end of that vetting inspection, all this was happening. It was like, housekeeping was extremely poor. Extremely poor means you're going to be explaining to the oil company then about why was it extremely poor, etc. But look at it from the point of the seafarer. Is that really a right kind of a finding? So I think I'm going on too long, but I would like to see a world of trust for safety improvement in the industry, and SIRE being a tool for it and not SIRE being a punishment to the world. Thank you.
Valuable points there. Fabian, do you have any comments there? And then I want to maybe get Steve's viewpoint on that rewarding honesty. I like that. Yeah, that's quite a good point there. But Fabian, over to you just like quickly.
Yeah, thank you. So what we really believe is a great thing about SIRE 2 is that it takes the seafarers seriously. Of course, it's a new level of pressure that there are these conversations and these interview questions, even for ratings that have not been used to this. But on the flip side, it takes them seriously and it allows the industry to recognize the seafarers more as an equal counterpart to the shore team and brings the responsibility closer to the front line where it actually lays in the day-to-day. So while there is a big change happening and there will be some pains in the transition process, we believe that ultimately it's a great change, and we're here to support this very important change that raises the bar, not just for the 5% that are immediately affected by this new inspection regime, but also for the industry as a whole, as usually the tankers are pressing ahead and setting the standard for everybody else going forward. So we're excited about this new world that we live, about this generational change. Thanks for picking that up, and thank you for the great conversation. That's all that I want to add at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabian. Steve, do you want to have a sort of bit of the last word? We are over our time now, but just on this whole issue of honesty, and there's been a lot about this need for positive feedback.
Yeah, and I think there's a good direct answer to that is that the question in 2.0 about defect lists is there to allow for that trust, in that if on the vessel you have a defect, some machinery is out of commission or some, waiting for a spare part or something like that, and that is properly recorded in the defect list, and that is available to the management of the company, and everybody's tracking what's happening with that defect. That is not an observation, because that is a demonstration of the system working properly, and if you like, the charter or whatever, the reader having the trust in the company that he's addressing these things that happen every day on every ship. There's always something breaks down or something. It's just life. But as long as it's been tracked and recognised and mitigated in the proper way, that is not an observation. And I think that is the way that 2.0 addresses these things, more than just simply saying, whatever it is that's wrong, we're going to record it as an observation, even if you know and you're addressing it and you're waiting for the spare part. So I think that answers that to some extent.
Brilliant. And just before I go on to Pradeep, who's got his hand up, if any of the delegates, and certainly the viewers at a later stage who will be viewing it on the Shipmanagement International website, do you have any technical queries about it, SIRE, what's 2.0 process, such as a PIQ, please email questions to support@ocimf.org. I think that was correct, Steve, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Sure. That's
Pradeep, probably the last word over to you.
Just a little addition to what Steve was saying about the defect management system. This is one of the areas where there is a severe lack of trust between the inspectors and the crew and the ship managers and owners. It's the same as the regulation in PSC, where we are required to report things to a port state control before a PSC inspection if there are any defects, and then they are not supposed to give us a deficiency in the PSC if all the mitigating actions are in place. So I understand that it comes pretty much very similar to the PSC regime. And just before I retired, there was a lot of discussion, and in another forum, unfortunately, someone from let's say one of the oil companies actually said, no, we still want the deficiency to be noted down. While SIRE 2.0 says that if the mitigating actions are all in place and the inspector is satisfied, it should not lead to a negative observation. But at the ground level, I think to the SIRE inspectors, that message has not yet gone through or not yet been adopted, because certain members are not yet of that opinion. And this is coming from another forum that I attended on SIRE 2.0. So I think there's more work to be done out there in the training of the inspectors to understand that certain times you can't send a spare part to, for example, Brazil, because the customs take a month to get it through. And there may be things which are wrong. I fully agree that there is also a bit of improvement or a decent amount of improvement that is needed from the ship operators, the ship's crew, and the vessel managers to be honest about it. If the inspector doesn't listen, then take it up with the process internally to SIRE to say, well, we did declare it properly and then we still got a finding, and I'm sure it will then get addressed properly. But there is a lack of trust on this part a lot. From my information is only a year old, but I'm still in touch with people in the field, and I think there is work to be done on that. Sorry for that intervention, and thank you.
No problem. Well, thank you very much indeed, Captain. And I'd like to thank today's panelists. It's been an exceptional webinar today. A lot of ground covered. Fabian, I'd like to thank Kaiko for getting involved with us on this as well. It's really, really important. And it's good to be able to draw on the knowledge and the expertise that we have access to. And maybe that's a little bit of a thanks to the online facility that people are able to then come in on these types of meetings. I really appreciate it. So I'd like to thank all of you here today for your participation. I'd like to thank the listeners who came in as well. Again, this has been recorded, so that'll be on the SMI website and also covered editorially in the next issue of Ship Management International. But thank you very much indeed. And we look forward to discussing this subject again in the near future. But have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.